Afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, June the 20th of the year 2022. For my wife, Liz, and I, it is our 18th wedding anniversary today. We've been married for 18 years, had 6 children, and we are here for our regular Monday church service. If you are watching us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, you can thank Restream.io for being able to broadcast all those at the same time. This is Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. My name is Andy. Welcome to my living room, and thank you for joining us. Right in front of me is Paul. To Paul's left, sitting on the floor, is Richard. Sitting right between them is our dog, Sweetheart. To my left is Steve. Off to my right and off camera, we have Jacob, Grace, Hannah, Leah, and my wife, Elizabeth. I guess. For next week, I was making an appointment for somebody. I believe it was Jacob, and the appointment was at 2:30. And they said, you can come in on Tuesday, the 27th at 2:30. Well, there's a problem. Tuesday is the 28th. So I don't know if they meant the appointment is on Tuesday at 2:30, which in that case, church will be fine. But if the appointment is Monday, the 27th at 2:30, we'll have church on Tuesday. We'll figure it out. I'll be posting on Facebook. You'll all know. Steve, I'll be in touch. And we will get right into it with our first song of the evening. As always, if for some reason you're not allowed to watch the sound, the song is God is in Control by Twyla Harris. And hopefully this works. Okay. I'm ready to roll. Okay. And that song will tie into the theme of this week's service as we continue on in the book of Genesis. We've been following along with the story of who, Paul?
Joseph?
Yes, Joseph. Very good. All right. We are on. Oh, come on.
The split screen?
Yes, it's doing the split screen. Shouldn't be doing the split screen.
Right.
Do you want me to hit the button?
Hold on. Let me see if I can. It did good the last song. No? Oh, come on. Why are you not? No, I don't need help. Go away. Go away. All right, let me.
I'll get that pillow off you.
Why isn't it letting me do this? I don't know why it's. Is it maybe this one? There. That should help. Okay. I don't know why it did that. Last time it worked fine. All right, we are on the 29th lesson in the book of Genesis, chapter 41. We're going to start with Psalm number 32.
Hey, Richard.
Blessed is the one who transition.
Pressure.
Transgressions.
Oh, Richard, instead of saying all, how about you just fix your correction and move on?
Transgression.
Is forgiven whose sin is covered.
What do you say? blessed, you say blessed.
Yeah.
Just blessed is the man against whom the Lord counsel iniquity, and in those feared there is no deceit.
For when I kept sawing my bones wasted away fall
Through
my
groaning.
groaning all day long.
For day and night,
Your
your hand was heavy up on me. My strength
no
was
pulse.
No.
dried up as by the best
Heat.
of everything. The heat of summer.
Selah. Now the word Salah, it actually pops up a lot in the Psalms, and we don't know what it is. It was written in these Psalms because the Psalms were meant to be sung. They were hymns. They were music. And we think it's a music direction. Maybe it means pause here, or maybe it means get louder. Maybe it means get softer. We don't know, but it's a music direction of some kind.
I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity
Iniquity.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I said I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity
Iniquity.
Okay.
of my sin. Selah.
Say
When I went over, I thought that's an inquiry.
oh. Why are you doing this?
Why not?
All right. Therefore, let everyone who is godly offer prayer to you at a time when you may be found. Surely in the rush of great waters they shall not reach him.
Psalm 30.
Hannah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing it again? What do you have to do again? You are hiding. You are a hiding place for me. Persevere.
You preserve.
Preserve. Sorry, never mind. From preserve me from trouble. You surround me with shouts of deliverance.
Deliverance. Yep, that was pretty good sounding out. Selah.
So Selah. I will
Instruct.
I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will
Counsel.
counsel you with my eye upon.
Oh, be not like a horse or a mule without understanding which must be curbed,
Good. Yep.
whipped, bit, and
Bridle.
bridle, or it will not stay near you.
Okay.
Many are the sorrows of the wicked, but steadfast love surrounds one who trusts in the Lord.
Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, all righteousness.
Righteous.
Darn it. And shout for joy, all you upright in heart.
Okay. Okay, we're going to start in chapter 41 by listening to verses 1 through 13.
What is this one?
1 through 13. So I have that up there. Share the first. 41, 1 through 13.
And now time for it be that.
Genesis 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh deemed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them. and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged.
So that is what had happened last time. There was a thing about the 2 dreams. The 2 officials of Pharaoh, where the one got put to death and the one got his job back. And that was to help establish that Joseph was an interpreter of dreams. So let's continue on. 2 whole years after the last set of dreams about the cupbearer and the cook. So it's been quite a while that Joseph's been in prison and a slave in Egypt. To this point, we haven't been given how long Joseph had been in Egypt. It hasn't given us any markers for it. But here we start to get an idea that after the cupbearer said that he would remember him, he forgot about him, Joseph sat in prison for 2 more years. It might seem unfair that Joseph is constantly wronged, but has he complained about it? And the answer is no.
No.
And what it's showing is the type of character that Joseph is, the type of person that he is, the morals and values that he has. Sometimes the good things that we do feels like it goes unrewarded. Why must we always wait? Why does it always feel like the things that we're doing, God isn't seeing them? Other people, all kinds of good things are always happening to them, and we're getting left behind. It's similar to prayer. We pray for immediate results. If I pray for something at 11 o'clock, at 11:01, I expect the Mustang to pull into my driveway, but that's not how it works. Things work differently when it involves God's will, right? It has to be His will for us, and it has to be on His time. A believer's life is not. Believer's life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So we have to remember that we're not in it for the short term. We're in it for the very long term. Things aren't always going to happen immediately. At 12 years old, you're not going to have everything that's great for your life happen, and you'll be able to retire and speed off into the sunset with the top down on your convertible. Things like that don't happen. You're going to have to work, and you're going to have to put in your time, and you're going to have to go and live your life. And that's just how it is.
So if we take 3 minutes, I think is the fastest for a mile. Well, you multiply that by 26, so 78. So you have to wait an hour and 18 minutes for stuff to happen.
Things don't happen on our time. They happen in His time. We've talked about the sovereign plan before. He's in control. Kind of like that song we just listened to, God is in control. It's the whole reason why I chose that song, just for that one little line. But now the first dream Pharaoh has is 7 fat cows coming out of the Nile, and they're eating reeds on the shoreline. And then 7 skinny cows come out of the Nile and they eat the fat cows. And then Pharaoh wakes up. And he goes right back into a dream, and he has a second dream where there are 7 healthy ears of grain on one stalk, and 7 thin ears come out that are destroyed by an east wind, and they eat the 7 healthy ears. Now, this brings us back to, we've talked about in Genesis before, how everything east is bad. Well, the east wind has made these 7 unhealthy thin ears of grain, and they eat the 7 healthy ones.
Excuse me.
Please don't shout "excuse me" into the microphone, Paul.
Really?
Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. It must have been vivid, it must have been lifelike for him to remember all of the details, and for him to have it shake him so much that he thought that it was completely real. It troubles his spirit so much that he calls all his magicians and his wise men. It probably sounds familiar because this happened somewhere else in a Bible story we learned about.
Yeah. Book of
Yeah, Book of Daniel with
Book of
Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, Paul.
Yep.
Normally you have that right away. But the thing to remember is that it happened here first. So before Daniel started interpreting any dreams, Joseph was doing it.
Hey.
And he does it for a different king, the Pharaoh. So the cupbearer comes out and he goes, I remember my offenses today. So earlier, last chapter, the cupbearer says to Daniel, or to Joseph, only remember me when it is well with you. So the cupbearer is told, hey, when you live and you get your job back and things are okay, tell the Pharaoh who I am and what I did, so I'm not stuck down here forever. And the cupbearer completely forgot about him. But then, now that the Pharaoh has these dreams that he needs interpreted, the cupbearer remembers Joseph. 2 years later, 2 years later,
2 years later.
but it is the appointed place and time according to God. Remember, God is in control of this whole situation. What if Joseph had been let out of prison and he wasn't there for Pharaoh to find him, so that the other events of this chapter could have been set into motion? So everything happens in God's time, in his place, in his plan. Now, Joseph becomes the model for all believers. He is the favored son who his father gives him that special gift, and his other brothers don't like him at all. And then he's sold into slavery. But he becomes the best slave ever, and he gets control of the household of Potiphar, and Potiphar doesn't have to worry about anything. And Joseph is this great household manager, and he's the best slave that he can be, and he's thrown into prison. And then Joseph becomes the best prisoner that there can be, and he excels at it so that Pharaoh can hire him to be his dream interpreter. All through this, we don't hear about Joseph complaining about these things. He takes it all on the chin and stride, and he lives his life with lots of waiting but being patient. Patience is a virtue. Sticking to your morals. All this time, Joseph could have gotten ahead if he had not stuck with his morals, but he has. He does what's good. He was tempted by Potiphar's wife, and he stuck to his guns and said, no, 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 you're not married to me. Even though it's acceptable in this culture, I don't believe that. Then he's the leader of the prison, and he takes care of the other prisoners, whereas he's in control. He can make them do whatever he wants, but he doesn't. He doesn't go against what he believes is right. He does his best at everything, all the work that he has. Remember, this is a lesson that we learned last time. We said, as you go through life, let people see who you are based on what you believe. finally, the cupbearer remembers Joseph and gets him hired for this Pharaoh job, and this sets Joseph up to do bigger and greater things. We're going to listen to verses 14 through 24. Okay. Verses 14 through 24. Through 24.
Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me.
So we've heard the dream explained to us twice. Pharaoh calls for Joseph, and they clean him up and make him presentable. When you take an inmate out of a jail and you're going to bring him before the judge, you have him get cleaned up and dressed up to go before the judge. When you're going to go in and do a job interview, you get yourself all cleaned up and you make yourself presentable for the job interview. But there's a deeper meaning here. It's not just that Joseph was going to go before Pharaoh, so he had to be cleaned up. When we are not believers, we are slaves and prisoners to the sin that we have in our lives. Sin makes us unholy and unclean. Things that are unholy cannot go before the Lord at all. We can't have any interaction with God. When we have our death at the end of our life, we become spirit. The only way we can get before God to ever see him is when we have those spirit bodies, those rapture bodies, and it is before the ultimate judge, Jesus Christ. Now, the meaning that I have there is that when you believe, you are working through your whole marathon of life to get yourself prepared to go see the ultimate judge, just like they took Joseph and cleaned him up before Pharaoh. No sin can go near God because he is too holy. We need to be cleaned beforehand, just like Joseph before Pharaoh, just like an inmate before a judge. But for us, it's a marathon process. It takes our whole lives. None of us are perfect. There's always that piece that needs to be worked on, that needs to be perfected. So that's what our lives are about. Pharaoh says, I heard from people that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph, here's your job interview. I want you to toot your own horn and tell me how great you are. You're this dream interpreter, and you have these dreams as well. when you go into a job interview, they're going to tell me what's good about you. Tell me something great that you can do. And that's what Pharaoh was looking for here. And Joseph says, it is not in me. Our other dream interpreter that we've learned about, Daniel, has the same response, that it's God who's the one that does the interpreting. So, but like I said, Joseph did it first.
So what if you did that in a job interview?
It's an interesting idea. You should try it and let me know. These dreams come from God, and He's the one that gives me the meaning. God is the one that sets these things up. God is the one that gives you these dreams. He's the one that's going to interpret them for you. Dreams are retold from earlier, but we have one new detail. We're told by Pharaoh that when the skinny cows eat the fat cows, that they stay so skinny that they didn't even realize that they had eaten all the fat cows. And you'd think that if the skinny cow ate the fat cow, he'd become a fat cow. But not so, not in this dream. So that must mean something.
You're a fat cow.
It does not mean that your dad is a fat cow.
I've never called you a fat cow.
Not one bit.
No, it's saying that if you eat something, you'll stay skinny.
That definitely does not happen to me either. So, listen to verses
No, it's
20.
talking about Pharaoh, that's why.
Pharaoh. Oh, he is Egyptian, baby. He's out in the hot sun. Verses 25 through 36 of chapter 41. 25 through 36.
Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now therefore let Pharaoh so discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve of the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine.
Does famine mean sand or
No, famine means no food.
ah?
No, like famine. There's nothing.
No food.
No food. The dreams of Pharaoh are one. Joseph is telling Pharaoh that, yeah, you had 2 dreams, but they have a lot of things in common, meaning they're talking about the same thing. The repetition signifies certainty. We're told something here, but then we're told it again. That means that it's going to happen. This is a common theme in the Bible. This happens a lot. If we're told something and it's repeated, it means that it's certain to happen. Same thing here. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. And here, another common Bible theme is God using an unbeliever or a non-believer to further his plan. This actually just appears to be, it happens to be Pharaoh a lot. It happened with Pharaoh here. It happens with Pharaoh, with Moses. There was.
Can I say something? This is like for like it's this is the remember the VeggieTales we watched where it had 7 years of like good and 7 years of bad.
Yes.
So like no stock of food.
Yep.
7 years and then it's
Yep.
That reminds me of that.
Are we going back to VeggieTales
It
week?
was based on this. Hold on. So what God is doing here is using a non-believer to help further his plan, his story, what he needs to happen. And like I said, it's a Pharaoh here, it's a Pharaoh with Moses, it's Nebuchadnezzar, it's Cyrus the Great, it's any of those other people that don't believe in our God but help further his plan.
Are we going back to VeggieTales week?
We'll see, Paul. The cows coming out of the Nile River means that this years of plenty are because of the Nile giving Egypt fertile harvests. The Nile was very important to the Egyptian people, as were most rivers, but mostly to Egypt because the Nile's flooding helped set up its soil for the grain. So when the cows are coming out of the Nile, those are saying that the Nile is very important to these feasting years. The 7 fat cows and 7 healthy ears signify 7 years of plenty. The implication is it says here in Egypt, but it's possibly worldwide. We'll see later on where this happens, not just here. Oh, no, stop it. The 7 skinny cows and the 7 unhealthy skinny ears signify 7 years of terrible famine or no food. And they're going to be so bad that no matter how good the years of plenty are, everybody's going to completely forget about how great things were because these years of famine are going to be terrible. So that's what this dream is about. The 7 skinny cows eating the fat cows but not getting fat means you're not even going to remember how good things were during the 7 good years, during the 7 bad years. Linking famine in Egypt seems to be a common theme. It happened to Abraham. There was a famine in Abraham's time, and he went down to Egypt, which set up another theme where Abraham lied about his wife being his sister. And the same thing happened with Isaac. There was a famine in the promised land during Isaac's time, and he went down to Egypt and he lied about his wife being his sister. So common themes are happening here, but it seems like famine and Egypt go together like lamb and rice.
It's the desert.
Yep. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man. Joseph is setting up here the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And he's also saying, I'm giving you all this info. Use your wiseness as Pharaoh and choose somebody to help us here. A lot of times people think that knowledge and wisdom is the same thing. Knowledge is just plain facts. Learning things is knowledge. But wisdom is being able to take the facts and do something with it. Wisdom is the action. What Joseph has done here he has used his entire life to interview for the job of chief wisdom man. Or not what he's going to be called, but
Behold,
chief wisdom man.
wisdom man.
Yes.
I thought you said cheese with wisdom.
Chief. Joseph gives Pharaoh the info. Now it's time for everybody to prepare and take 1/5 of the produce. 20% of the grain during the time of plenty needs to be put away so that they'll have something during the time of famine. So they really need to get ready for this. Obviously, Joseph is wise enough. He interprets dreams and he gives solutions, but he's also humble. He looks at Pharaoh and he says, I'm going to give you all this info. I'm going to give you the knowledge. I hope you have the wisdom to pick somebody smart enough. What Joseph could have done is gone in there and go, I'm a heck of a lot smarter than you. I saw all this coming. You should make me your chief wisdom man and I'll run this government program.
Um,
No.
this is, the, so what I was going to say is that this is the, it's like the VeggieTales because of the food, but in the VeggieTales one, they store the food in a huge tower thingy,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And they did. Doesn't Joseph also have family problems too?
We're getting there. We're getting there. So, but this is leading up to that. Pharaoh, go ahead and pick somebody smart enough to run this government program. That should be, to anybody, that should be a big clue that this is going to be a mess because the government is going to run something. But this is the difference between divine providence, where God sets forth a plan and has the wisdom to do things, and a government agency. Because if you were to take the government and put them in control of the sand in the Sahara would run out of sand. True story, it would happen. The main takeaway is that this prophecy is foretold. God is in control. Oh, God is in control. Seems like a song we just listened to. Prepare for the upcoming famine. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. You need to prepare for it. You need to have somebody smart enough to run your government agency here.
He's implying on himself.
Build reserves from your plentiful years, and that's a solid principle to have to this day. It's when things are going good, always think of the future and prepare for what could happen. So instead of taking your money and spending it all right away, save it up for what is coming.
Or don't.
Or don't. Verses 37 through 49. Verses 37.
Oh, you think it's okay to go down?
Right?
This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. And they called out before him, Bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before
Dad, want to know where he says, while no one should put up. Well, I don't know what I did when he said, "Wow, no one should put up no feet or hands." I put up my foot, and then a little bit after I put up my hand.
So you were playing emotions. Okay. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Good idea, Joseph. You've come up with a good plan. You have a way to get them through their famine and through the terrible times that are about to come. Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? This is the first mention in the Bible about the Spirit of God being in man. Up to this point in the book of Genesis, it talks about we see blessing, we see that God is with you, we see your holiness, but nobody has said we see the Spirit of God in you. Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. Pharaoh looks at Joseph and says, I see the blessing, I see his hand, I see his wisdom in you. You see dreams and give solutions. You're the one that the Spirit of God is inside. You know what, Joseph? You're hired. I know you weren't interviewing for the job. You said that I should pick the wisest man, so I'm going to pick him. It's you. Only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you. So the same thing as when Joseph lived in Potiphar's house. Joseph says that Potiphar and him were equals, except that Potiphar ran the house, or was the lord of the household. It's the same thing here. Joseph is basically just as great as the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh is still the Pharaoh. Joseph has the keys to the kingdom. Joseph is given the signet ring, meaning he has the power to sign royal decrees and make pronouncements. He's given garments of fine linen. He doesn't have his prisoner rags anymore. He's given a gold chain, not rusty old chain shackles and chains. He's come a long way. Also, he says that Joseph is made to ride in his second chariot. So kind of like the vice president rides in Air Force 2, Joseph rides in chariot number 2. So that's what's going on here. Bow the knee to Joseph. He just got taken out of prison, but now he's the second dog in all of Egypt. He's very respected, just like that. Boom. He goes from prison to second in command. No one shall lift up hand or foot. Yep. This showcases Joseph's power. The people in Egypt have to obey him because he knows what he's talking about, and he's going to get them through a terrible time. Also, what's happening here is when things are going great, when things are wonderful, people don't think that something bad could happen. Let's contrast this to Noah. During the time of Noah, people didn't think that anything bad could happen because all the good was happening in the world. And then the flood came all at once and surprised them. It's the same thing here. People around the world are going to be in these 7 years of plenty. They're not going to think that anything could go wrong, but then something will go wrong. Right before the stock market crash in 1929, people didn't think during the roaring 20s that there would be the Great Depression, but yet there was. Same thing here. Joseph is given this strange name with a Z in it, Zaphanath-Paneah. It's an Egyptian name. Nobody really knows what it means. The suggestion is God speaks, man lives, but we don't know. And the only place that this is ever mentioned is here. He isn't completely called Zaphanath-Paneah through the rest of the text. So it's obviously not important. Same thing that happened with Daniel when he is given the Babylonian name of Belteshazzar. They are remembered as Joseph and Daniel. They kept their Hebrew roots. They chose to identify with who they were at their birth, the culture that identifies them. They don't take on this new name so that they get lost and lose sight of God. They want to remember what's important to them, being Joseph, being Daniel. Same thing. And he gave him in marriage Asenath. Pharaoh gives Joseph one wife. Is this a coincidence? Joseph's morals, maybe? Unlike his father, who had two wives and two concubines, and there was that great child war, Joseph only takes one wife. Joseph, we're told, is 30 years old. So he was 17 when he went into slavery. That meant he spent 13 years here in Egypt. So all that stuff that happened to him in Egypt, being in Potiphar's house, being in the prison, and now interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, happened over a period of 13 years. That's quite a time. And he went through all the land of Egypt.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So just like Isaac, who was blessed and had a lot of riches, but he still worked hard to earn more, Joseph does the same thing here. He doesn't just sit and rule. He goes out and makes sure that his plan is being put into place. The food is stored like the sand of the sea, kind of like Abraham's descendants will be like the grains of sand. You won't be able to count them. And we'll finish off with verses 50 through 57. All right. Verses 50 through 57. Nope, wrong one.
Wrong one.
50 through 57.
The year of famine came. 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth.
All right. And that is how the chapter ends. But now we'll explain what we're talking about. Two sons are born to Joseph during the years of plenty, so it's before he turns 37, he has 2 sons. The older son is named Manasseh, the younger son Ephraim, and this is to mirror Isaac with the 2 sons Esau and Jacob. It's not like Jacob, who had 12 of them. Joseph only has 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh literally means causes to forget. So it's joy over sorrow. He has 13 years of pain where he's sold into slavery by his brothers, but it's all worth it because of this son, Manasseh. He forgets all the terrible things that have happened to him. And Ephraim literally means fruitful. Joseph is fruitful in all things that he does in these 7 years of plenty. Everything associated with Joseph is fruitful, so he names his second son fruitful. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Now this is similar to Jacob and all the kids that he has Well, he's in a foreign land. He's not home in the promised land. Jacob has all his kids while he's working for that doesn't matter. Laban, yeah,
Yeah, Laban.
very good. He has all his kids, and they happen. It's a blessing to him, even though he's not in his homeland. Same thing here with Joseph. There was famine in all the lands. In the whole known world, there is famine. That's a common theme that happens here in the Bible as well. But in the land of Egypt, there was bread. With God's help and Joseph's prep, they knew to get ready for it, and they worked hard for 7 years so that they would have food during this time of famine. All the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain. Egypt set itself up as the breadbasket of the world, and the reason why some places were to survive because they didn't prep for it. Noah must have looked like a fool building a giant boat when he did for 100 years, but when that flood hit and those people were drowning under the water, I bet you didn't look like a fool. Same thing with Joseph here.
Yeah.
So now Egypt, that's been saving all this extra grain, instead of just wasting it, earn and burn, stash and dash, they have set themselves up as a world powerhouse because they have food and nobody else does. All right, and we're going to finish on the song, Whom Shall I Fear? As always, if for some reason you lose the words of the song, you can look this up and listen to it on yourself. It's by Chris Tomlin, Whom Shall I Fear, or God of Angel Armies. We've heard this song before. There we are. Okay. You are my morning song. Your darkness fills the night. It cannot hide the light. Whom shall I fear? You crush the enemy underneath my feet. You are my sword and shield. No troubles in this field. Whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. My strength is in your name, for you alone can save. You will deliver me, yours is the victory. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. And formed against me shall stand. You hold the power in your hands. I'm holding on to your promise. hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful. You are faithful. You are faithful. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. He's always by my side. All right. See, does it stop? All right. Thank you for joining us this week
You're welcome.
for learning about Joseph and his continued struggles, but how they fit into God's plan. 13 years of Joseph being the best at what he does got him the top job in all of Egypt. And he wasn't even interviewing for it. He didn't go into it knowing that he would be in consideration to be second in command over everybody next to Pharaoh.
Um. Al- always, always do your best, even at bad times.
Yes.
There we go.
But not me.
Yes. So that is one of the lessons that we're learning from the life of Joseph. He's constantly struck down. Things are made terrible for him, but he thrives and he looks to the future. You're going to have bad jobs in your life. Do your best at them. Let people see that it's not getting you down. And God will always be with you no matter what. Whom shall you fear? Nobody. Remember, God is in control. And with that, we say next week, we're not sure if it's going to be Monday or Tuesday. Remember what I said, but I'll let you know. Keep look on our Facebook. To Liz, I hope we have a great rest of the day for our anniversary. And everybody, see you next week sometime.